Hey, what's up, everyone? Morey Croson here, and this is going to be the 17th episode of the Morey Miles Show. I think this is going to be one of the best episodes yet, as we're going to be really going into the scientific breakdown of Usain Bolt and his sprinting mechanics. I have really been going in depth into this the last couple days here. I've been doing a couple shorts for YouTube, and I just thought, man, I've done a lot of stuff on Usain Bolt in the past, but none of it has been as specific as I would like it to be, and really get as in depth and as I think I could get when it comes to his running form. And the more I look at how Usain Bolt runs and how he is able to get out of the start and the transition, top end speed, the more it's like he's the best ever, right? I mean, I don't need any more validation than him running the best time ever, but it just really occurred to me where it's like there should be way more information on the things that he does really well, because the reason he is the best ever is because he does so many of the key biomechanical things very, very well. And the more we can understand that, the more success we're going to have as sprinters. So we're going to start with the start here. We're going to go through the transition. We're going to top end speed. If you're listening to this on the podcast, then I would recommend you also following along on the video as well. But I mean, even if you're just listening to it, you still should be able to get a good amount of information from just hearing it. But obviously at times, if you can maybe make a note of certain timestamps, if you want to look back and see what are some of the specifics that really stand out to you, so then you could actually get some visuals, I think that'll help. And then as always, if you like the information, click that thumbs up down below, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, you can leave those down below. We're going to get really in depth into Usain Bolt, his sprinting mechanics, and what he's able to do at a very, very high level. And we'll go ahead and hop right into the video here. So as we get into this here, I do want to go over a couple of just the statistics of what he's able to achieve. And the first thing that stands out to me is, so we're going over the 10-meter splits. So this is when he ran 9.58, right? 10-meter splits. He had a reaction time of 0.46. He ran the first 10 meters 189, the 10 to 20 0.99. He ran the 20 to 30 at 0.90, 30 to 40, 0.86, 40 to 50, 0.83, 50 to 60, 0.82, 60 to 70, 0.81, 70 to 80, 0.82, 80 to 90, 0.83, 90 to 100, also 0.83 for a cumulative 9:58 world record. I don't know how long it's going to be standing, but it seems like as of right now, it's going to be for a pretty long time. He is also generating what is estimated to be about 1,000 pounds of force on his right leg and about 955 on the left leg, right? This is a guesstimation, obviously. Now, first thing we want to do here is get into the start and see some of the things that he's able to do really well within the start. And we're going to go from the very beginning. So I don't know if you've seen this video before, but there's somebody that like takes like a camera shot right there. So sorry that might be a little bit bright at first, but we do want to get like the very first action as much as we can, or get every little particular action that is taken the best that we can. So notice as he's coming up, both his hands coming up at about the same time, pretty simultaneously. He's also rising up really through like the shoulders, kind of upper body, while also simultaneously going out with the hips, okay? And he's also really far back, I think, on both feet, but definitely has a good amount of that heel behind the toe of that front leg, right? And he's also a good amount back on that back foot, so we can transition his weight into that back foot as he's coming forward and through. And he ends up having more of like a down forward action out of the hip as he's going to accelerate off. I think he does a good job of getting into a triple extension within that front leg. And what's important to me within your first step is really getting into a good dorsiflex position within the ankle, so then we can control that foot strike. So notice how he is really getting, and we're going to have different angles of this, but notice how he's doing a good job of getting that knee up and through and is in a dorsiflex position. So now as that foot hits, he's able to really control that landing, right? So we don't want to end up having too much of that heel lowering down. Okay, the best that we can, we want to be able to really absorb through that front foot as it's hitting the ground to make it so then we can more effectively transition off of that foot. Okay, with the arms, we can see he gets a lot of height within the elbow. okay, on the front part of it, and also gets plenty of range going back behind. Okay, that ends up being really helpful when it comes to being able to balance and really being able to get our weight through. So the higher we get this front arm or that front elbow, then the more we can see like a correlation of those hips coming forward. Okay, and the more we can get a pull back here of that arm, typically that ends up going into what type of front side mechanics we're able to achieve. Right, we do need to be aware of that ankle and the position of the ankle. I don't see a lot of people that struggle too much with getting this knee up and getting this the action of the front side within this first step, but I do see a lot of people that don't have good control of the foot through the and ankle as the foot striking the ground, and therefore struggle with that initial step. Okay, so now he's landing. Notice as that foot's hitting the ground, how fast he gets this foot to come right through. So as that front foot is landing, he already has this foot basically even with the landing foot. Okay, and the reason that happens is because there's just not a lot of wasted time. We can see a bit of a lift of that back leg, right? So I see a lot of people that will go and really lift up a lot in that back foot as they come off the ground. He does that a little bit, not too much, but he comes really straight through with that knee, drives that knee through, and comes and strikes the ground. And again, as that foot's hitting the ground, he has that trail leg or that translation leg right behind it. And also notice the height of that leg. Okay, this is something that we talk a lot about. Is having that good low heel recovery. And we could see that here within his start. He does a really good job of being able to maintain a good position within his back foot, right, as he's coming through, and really drags that foot a little bit there. Okay, I don't necessarily teach the toe drag, but I also, if people need it, I will recommend that they at least go and try it out just to be able to help understand that what that low heel recovery should feel like, what it should look like as they're going through that, transitioning into that second step. Okay, really good job of here, again, getting good height with that front foot, right? What is now that front foot, gets good dorsiflex position, and is really doing an excellent job of getting out. Okay, in these steps, a lot of times I'll see people that will get really vertical very early on. Okay, and when that happens, that's going to impact how well we're going to be able to create large amounts of force in the ground. Okay, what stands out with Usain Bolt is he's just able to generate so much force in the ground. The reason is because he very, very effectively stays horizontal as he's building speed here. Okay, does a good job landing with that foot coming right underneath him here, and then transitions into this next step. We're going to go and let's get the angle from here. Notice as he takes these first few steps, how much of this is obviously a different race, but we can see that he gets a lot of what's called adduction of the hip. Okay, and also what we would consider internal rotation. So adduction would be that knee coming inwards. We don't want to see too much abduction, which would be the knee being outside of the hip. Okay, and then we're also seeing what's called internal rotation, which is where the knee is going to be inside of the foot. External rotation would be the knee outside, the foot coming inside when it has to do with the front side mechanics. So it would kind of be switched if the foot was behind. Okay, but notice how he uses that to then strike the ground. Right now he's coming straight through here, knees in that adducted position, and then he goes into external rotation as he hits the ground, which is where we end up being a lot when we're squatting and landing. Is we really teach people that we want to be in that external rotated position. So it helps him to be able to be internally rotated, and then as he's striking the ground, his leg is going through an external rotation and really going through an extension, which means the leg is flexed, right? The knee is in front of the hip, which is going to be a flex position. And then as that knee is getting underneath the hip, which is going to be an extension action, he's not actually into extension until the knee passes the hip, right? Now he's in hip extension, but he's going from a more flex position here into a more extended position here. So his hip is technically extending. He's using the muscles that will be extending in the hip to strike the ground. And therefore, he's preparing himself to strike the ground through the muscles of the hip, through the muscles of the lower half, and positioning himself to be able to control that very, very well. So then he can transition off of the ground very quickly. When it comes to the start, it's so much about how much time are we spending on the ground and how much force are we able to put in the ground, and really being able to be very effective at doing both. Okay. And so we could see from this front side how he creates this internal rotation and adduction to then allow him to then strike the ground in a way that I think we can really learn from and utilize to be able to help us with our first few steps, and even as we are going into our drive phase or acceleration. Okay, and this is a prime example of why we're looking at the best ever, right? Yeah, I do agree that we're not all going to be able to run 9.58, and I do think that there's certain things that he might do a little bit more of or a little bit less of because he is 6'5", okay, and has scoliosis and all these different anatomical things or God-given gifts that he has. But if we can get closer to a lot of the things that he does really well, there's a reason why he's the greatest ever, right? 9.58 is not a common thing. 27.7 miles an hour. I think the fastest he ever ran was 28 miles an hour. That's not a thing that happens from chance or is just a God-given thing, right? He talks about how it took him, I want to say, 4 years to run sub 10. So, yeah, he obviously has a lot of God-given talent here, but he definitely was able to harness his skill in order to make him into the best ever. He does a really good job being able to, for his height and for his size, control his ability to strike the ground very, very well, right? And that's what stands out, right? He's somebody that's a very tall guy, but is able to accelerate. I mean, a 189.10 is phenomenal, right? That's a really, really high level 10 for somebody that is his size, okay? Then as that foot strikes the ground here, we're seeing the foot kind of go out to the side slightly, right? And as he continues to accelerate, what stands out is one, and this is probably the most important thing, this is probably the reason why I made this video, really wanted to get in depth into it, is to really get in depth into the front side mechanics and what he's able to do with his foot when striking the ground, step after step after step, and why it's so important that you have to build that from the beginning. Okay, so yeah, it's great to be able to work at top speed. I love doing 10-meter flies, 20-meter flies, things like that. I love being able to harness your ability to run as fast as possible. But if we don't understand truly what it takes to get us to that top speed, we're never going to be able to get the results that we are looking for when it comes to the performance that we want to be able to achieve in running maybe a 40-yard dash, a 60-yard dash, 100-meter, 200-meter, whatever the case may be, or even getting faster within a given sport like soccer or football or whatever. So what we're seeing here is a phenomenal ability to continue to get his leg up and through, foot up and through, and pull that foot back and down and really create a great reach, right? Like this is a good example where he's here really quickly, right? He gets that knee up and through, foot up and through very quickly, and then reaches and now is pulling his foot and his toe back down in the ground so he can land on the front part of his foot. Okay, because when you see this position, as he's going to strike the ground here, right? We zoom in, he's barely off the ground and he's pulling back. Let me just see how much I can kind of frame this. It looks like he's going to be basically on his heel, right? But he's so fast and being able to, even in this position, look at him. The heel is really lower than the toe, and he's barely not on the ground, barely his foot off the ground. On this next one, though, we could see he has way more momentum on the front part of his foot in comparison to the back part of his foot, right? Even if it's 50-50, right? Even if he has 50% of his weight on the front part of his foot, 50% of his weight on the back, so he's like right in the middle, that's still very impressive based off of where he was right before foot contact, and also helps in being able to understand how he's able to get his foot off the ground so fast, right? Because that, when the more you can keep your weight forward as it's striking the ground, and the better biomechanics we have, with having that foot flat, right, what we were looking at before, and making it so we're going into that external rotation and the extension within the leg, makes it so if we can maintain that during foot strike, now we can really get that fast contact time, right? Spend the least amount of time on the ground as possible, which is really what the goal is here. So he's getting a lot of what we would call extension in the leg, right? So he's really able to generate a lot of pull, okay? Because right here, he's flexed, right? He's in a very flexed position within the leg, within the hip. Now, as he's pulling, he's extending that leg as he's bringing that foot back underneath him and maintaining a very similar spine angle, right? So he's not lifting up a lot in the spine. We want to be able to understand that this is not we're trying to go as fast as possible, obviously, but there's a lot of patience involved with being able to build speed, right? Getting back into his splits, the fastest he ran was between the 60 and the 70 meter mark, 0.81. Okay. There's a lot of people that are watching this or listening to this that make the mistake of being in their top speed or being very close to their top speed at 30 meters, right? And therefore are not able to adequately build their speed and are operating below what their potential is. Okay. And that's the reality of the situation, is something that I'm making this video to help you be able to improve. Okay. And as that foot's striking the ground, okay, another thing to be aware of is, so right here, we could see foot off the ground, knee position behind the knee that's in front side. Obviously, this is a little bit older video, so the frame rates aren't as good as we can probably see today. But still, the next frame, which is about 3/100ths of a second, or sorry, maybe 4, okay, 7.75 to 0.79, so 4/100ths of a second, let's say. But within that 4/100ths of a second, we can see now he's landing with that knee in front of the leg that is striking the ground. Okay, so that gives us an indication of how fast he's driving that knee through, so then he can get that reach of the knee and of the foot, so he can get the leg up and through. So he's here, he gets that knee up and through, right? He gets a good height there, and immediately he's reaching to get the toe up. Okay, so here we could see the toes facing basically straight down. Next frame, we have a dorsiflex foot. Next frame, now we're getting that pull back behind. And the reason I say that it's a pull is because look at, again, how he's landing. If he was not pulling with the leg, if he was just extending right now, that leg, we wouldn't see him land that far forward. Okay, because if you're just getting extension, if you continue on this angle, you would have to land on the heel, right? There's no way that if he was just extending, that he would be able to get himself to land that far forward, okay? And with the foot that far underneath his hip. Okay, so the reality is we have, because there's people that think that we need to just extend the leg and not create that pull. And I am very against that narrative. And the more we slow down somebody like Usain Bolt, the more I'm firm on being against that narrative, because this is something that he started building up very, very early on in the race. I don't know exactly what step we're at here, but it's very obvious that he is putting an emphasis on that pull, right? Continuing to get more and more pull back. Look at how much effort he puts into this too, right? This is not an extension effort. That's an effort of pulling that leg back and really driving that other leg through. So now he could land on the front part of the foot. If he was just extending, I'm telling you, if he was just extending, okay, for a second, think outside the box. If you're still on this whole idea that you just need to extend and then don't need to pull, for 1 second, think outside the box and think, if that was the case, if he was just trying to extend, okay, then as he's extending from this position, how would he land on his toes? With that much dorsiflexion, and if he was just trying to extend or push out from that position, feel that within your own body, how would he land on his toes? There's no way. The only way he could land on his toes, the only way he can get to this position is if he's pulling that toe underneath. And that's really the action, is more so the action of the foot. And there's just a kinetic chain of muscles that start underneath your foot that connect to the soleus and the calf and the hamstrings and the glutes and the muscles of the lumbar spine, right, that have to be in use. Okay, you can't not use those muscles in this particular case. You have to be using all those muscles as that foot strikes the ground to then be able to land on the front part of your foot and then be able to effectively stride off the ground. Okay, and we can continue to see how he's building speed as he takes each one of these steps and is very patient with it, right? He's still keeping his chin down, his eyes down, right? He has a really more forward lean in his spine. Obviously, he's much more upright than all these other guys that are a lot smaller than him. Okay, but he's still in a position where he's building speed. He's not in a position here where he's at his top speed, and he's not in a position here where he's trying to very quickly get out of any type of position, any type of postural position. He's slowly transitioning himself out of these body positions as he's starting to build speed. So he's using really the position of the hips, right, coming forward and coming up with the hips to really guide his spine and his head. Okay, so that ends up being more of the priority, is how well are we getting our hips through, and how well are we able to really feel that pull in the leg to therefore help us get that spine up, right? Here's another great example of him really pulling back with his leg as he's striking the ground. So now he's in this position where he's landing with his foot really right underneath his hip. He's still slightly out in front though with the spine. Okay, so that to me says he's still really building speed here. He does a great job, I think, of having both an elbow action coming forward as well as an elbow action pulling back. I love when we look at things like what we were talking about before with the knee angle or the knee position. So we can see as that foot is striking the ground, he's already has the swing leg, which is the off leg. That knee is already through. We also see, and I'm just going to continue to go through as we look at this type of stuff, we also see as he's getting that knee to come right back forward and through, he's very, very quick to get that foot up behind him, right? So he closes this angle very quickly. Okay, so he goes from being very extended off of toe off. Okay, we have that heel straight up in the air. We have a lot of extension within that hip, right? 122 around degrees. It's hard to be able to say exactly, where that is, but probably about 120, maybe 125, somewhere in there. Okay. Then by the time he gets to 90, okay, so from an angular perspective, he went, maybe let's say 85. So he went like 30 degrees there. We could see now he's also already went from like a basically fully extended leg to now 51 degrees of flexion there in that knee. So very, very quickly went from a fully extended knee, okay, basically fully extended, to then bending to a 90-degree angle with the foot right underneath the hip, okay, with a 85, 90, very close to that. So he basically went 30 degrees from hip extension to hip flexion, and within that time went about probably, because he was probably in like the 180 range. Let's see it. So we could say like 163. Okay, so basically 100 degrees there, right? And how fast he was able to accomplish that. Okay, a little bit more than 100 degrees, right? And that's, again, it's a very, very difficult thing to be able to achieve. He's doing that very fast, right, is the point. Very fast with the backside, so then he can get plenty of time on the front side and then be able to really reach out in front and generate a lot of force in the ground. So notice he gets here very quickly. Okay, so it gives him the opportunity to get here very quickly where his knee is right underneath the hip or right in front of the hip. Okay, and we can call that 11-degree angle, knee to hip ratio. Okay, and then he gets extension out in front. Look at how much extension he's getting here. So much extension while still maintaining this toe upright. Okay, these are important angles that we're always looking at within the lab to be able to see, what are people doing well and not doing well. To then land in with most of his weight forward, right? His heel is much more off the ground than his toe. We've seen videos when he's running and you just see his feet, how he really wants to be landing on that front edge of the foot. But he's just very quick at being able to get to this position, okay, and have all that extension there, and then generate so much force on the ground. You can see the difference between, they talk about how on the left side he doesn't generate as much force. You can see he's not as effective with the pull of the leg, of the toe, right? He lands a little bit further back. His left leg is probably more of his balance kind of stance leg, or, where he has a little bit more ability to maybe push off, okay? Where that right side is really that forceful leg, right? I'm similar with that, where my left leg is, like if I'm going to start, I'd rather start with my left leg down. I naturally just feel a little bit better. If I'm like pushing off of my left leg, I can jump a little bit better on my left leg. All that stuff ends up being better on the left, but my right is really where all the force is if I'm trying to generate as much force in the ground as I can, right? And just being able to get very specific into how he's building that speed, right? Because, now it's just about length, okay? And just being able to really open up that stride and be able to create that length and that separation from foot to foot. And we see this with all the best guys, right? We see this with Noah Lyles. We see this with Fred Curley. We see this obviously with Usain Bolt, where they're just able to generate so much separation within their feet at one point. But then as that foot hits the ground, the opposite leg knee, that swing leg knee, is now past the leg that was out in front. So that just means that turnover is amazingly fast. Okay, so they're able to create a lot of length, a lot of reaching within the legs, a lot of extension within the hip going back, or the leg of the hip going back, while also simultaneously creating a lot of flexion of the leg that's out in front or that's reaching. And then as that foot's striking the ground, maintaining a lot of length within the spine and utilizing a lot of core strength, body strength, upper body strength to be able to pull that leg back underneath the land in a very upright position, while being able to be very stable, very controlled, and have a lot of weight very far forward as that other leg is coming through, and we're getting right back into reaching, extending, opening up. So it's this contraction and extension that is happening at such a high rate that you have no other ability than to run fast, right? But it's something that is built. It's something that you don't just start off with. It's something that you have to be able to work to control and achieve and stabilize step after step. And that is what makes you the greatest ever, right? That's what makes you the best in the world. And, again, we see this time after time with a lot of these top guys. Just a lot of force into the ground, right? Again, over 1,000 pounds of force out of the right leg, closer to 955 in the left. Amazing split times, 0.81 from 60 to 70 meters, which is, unbelievable. Top speed, 28 miles an hour, fastest person ever. Created multiple world records, won multiple gold medals, the most decorated sprinter ever, the fastest human being ever. How can we look at all those things and not say these are not things that we need to be repeating? I understand, not all of us are going to be able to achieve all the things that he does, right? We're not going to be able to pick up the same. He ran 100 meters in 41 steps. I mean, that's just crazy, right? Most people are like, if you're pretty fast, you can get it in like 43, 44, right? 41 is crazy. That's just unbelievably fast. And so what we want to be able to understand is, like, we're not all going to be able to achieve that level of length. Okay, we're not going to be able to have, we're not all going to be able to get to his level of foot contact time or be able to cycle as fast as he's able to. But if we can understand some of the things within the start, if we can understand some of the things within that transition, how he builds speed, how he gets to his top end speed, and use that information to help us get better, I think that ends up being a step in the right direction, right? If you're really far off from some of these things, I think it's a great opportunity for you to learn, a great opportunity for you to get better within your sprinting. And one of the things too I wanted to make a note of before signing off here is, and I'm going to put up this graph as well. You've probably already seen it a couple times, but if we look to see this graph with the Beijing performance, 969, when this is the Olympics, and then the IAAF 2009 is when he actually broke the world record. We actually see that his split time was faster in Beijing, 185 split time. Okay. But then we see that from 10 to 20, he ran 102, right? And in comparison to when he ran the world record, he was at 9.9. And really from there, he ends up having a few other parts of the race where he's not running as fast in Beijing as he was when he set the world record. And so the point being is, just because you run a little bit faster in that 10 meter doesn't mean you're setting yourself up to run faster. Sometimes it's actually more important to allow yourself to be patient and allow yourself to build speed than it is to just have the fastest 10 meter, right? We see it all the time. Christian Coleman being a great example, has one of the best 10 meters in the world, but has yet to win a 100-meter gold medal, right? And so I think that understanding that being able to build speed is the number one priority of what you should be doing as a sprinter or even as a field athlete is understanding building speed. Not always is just the quickness going to be important. It's going to be how well can you get to top speed, how well can you sustain your top speed, and how much control do you have when you're at that top speed that really makes it so you can better dictate your future as a athlete that is performing at a high level. Okay, because I see that a lot where you run a fast 10-yard, 0 to 10 or a fast 10 meter. Sometimes you're not in control. And if you lose control early on, I don't think that that's going to benefit you as an athlete. I think you want to be able to maintain control the best you can as you're sprinting in order to make it so you could be the highest level sprinter that you can, whether that be for, whatever the sport ends up being. So with that being said, we'll sign off here. I don't know how long this video is, hopefully not too long, but that is a full breakdown of Usain Bolt and his sprinting. I mean, we could have probably got more into some of the front side stuff and what he's doing on the front side, but I just think that information that we went over today should give you more than enough to be able to help you as a sprinter and give you a better idea of what you need to do. I would really put a big focus on, that transition, building it into that start, right? How well he's able to dorsiflex, how he builds the speed, and what he's doing as he's building that speed to then get him into his top end speed mechanics. And then from there, really start to harness and control that top end speed are things that you want to be able to understand how to do, right? So part of it is going to be understanding how to properly transition to get to your top speed. Then it's going to be another thing being able to hold that top speed. And then it's going to be a whole nother thing to be able to hold that for 40, 50 meters. So all those things you want to be able to build on and continue to get better at. And that's what getting the world record's all about. That's what you being able to really harness your skills and take your game to the next level is going to be about. You going from 11 seconds to 10 seconds or, mid 10 to low 10 or high 10 to mid 10. All those things are going to be based off of this information that we went over today and you being able to harness it and being very specific in what it is you need to get better at and then spending the time to be able to work on it and improve. So would love to help anybody that is interested. I have a ton of stuff in the description down below. Again, like the video or like the podcast, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff was always beneficial for us. But really, most importantly, there's nothing more that I would love for you to do than to take this information and use it to be able to improve as a sprinter. I always tell people I wish I had me when I was a young chap, when I was a young athlete trying to get better. And I really want to be able to spread this information and show you guys that it is all attainable, right? Your wildest dreams can be attained. You just have to put in the time and you'll be able to achieve whatever it is you're looking to achieve. Thanks for watching. Again, like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.